Hello guys, this is Pat from Database Comics. Today I wanted to make the official announcement of writing of the start of my book. So far I've come up with a title, and also I've set up a table of content. So usually how I do writing about books is first is determining the title and a table of content, and then also determining the subject matter, what I'm going to talk about. So, and then usually after that, I start the process of doing research on the subject. So I gather information sources for my book. I actually have started gathering sources for my book from various scholarly publications, and I've also done a little bit of research in comics. So this book is going to be part comic book um, commentary, part social analysis, part pop psychology, and I think it's going to be a very interesting book because I hadn't expected that I was going to write this book. I had already actually planned two other books, either or the other, that I was going to write about. But I wasn't planning on writing about this book. I got the idea of writing this book when I made a video for Superboy-Prime for my Krypton series, and I realized that the argument that I made was very interesting, and I thought it was also interesting to explore because the idea of the modern age of comics is not always very straightforward. There's a lot of controversy and there's a lot of disagreement about how the modern age of comics is um, portrayed or treated in comics. So I wanted to talk about that subject because I think it's probably very important and probably also very um, relevant for our time since comics are so popular. Actually, comic book inspired movies are so popular these days. So I hope you will like my content. Let me go into the table of contents for time being. Um, so I have it divided into four sections. As you can see, uh, I have the title of the book at the top. Superboy-Prime was right. The modern age of comics is too dark. And the whole idea is essentially about the perfect Earth. So I thought I was going to delve a little bit about um, religion, philosophy, and also politics. So I was going to talk about that in the first part, and then jump right into the idea of the perfect Earth in DC Comics. And then part two is about how on New Earth. So this is mostly about DC Comics, but I was going to incorporate Marvel in the latter two sections, section 3 and section 4. So I was going to talk about darkness and superheroes in DC Comics. So the idea of New Earth, the DC multiverse, the Guardians of the Universe, and then also talk about examples of that darkness in the post-crisis continuity. And then, of course, talk about a little bit of philosophy, what evil actually means. And then I was going to jump into the more social, pop, pop psychology and social analysis part. Um, I was going to talk about maybe comics and gun violence, and then also talk about comic coding, and then talk about fantasy versus realism in comics. So this is not the final draft. This is mostly a rough draft, but these are indications that I write on it to kind of give me an idea of where of how to guide where to guide my discussion, and then whether it is politically motivated. So talk about the Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, and talk about also our current cultural climate with the popularity of comic book movies, and then finally talk about superhero therapy, which I got an idea from reading a couple of articles on the internet. And then the last one is mostly about, um, I guess, what the commentary, the message behind Infinite Crisis and the corruption of Superboy-Prime. Um, Talk about how even though there was a new post-crisis continuity, there was still evil, New Earth still brought some evil into the DC universe, and then talk about maybe Alexander Luthor Jr. who masterminded the Infinite Crisis. Talk about Superman's legacy, and then finally whether superheroes are good role models. So there's going to be a mix of different approaches to the subject. It's not just one literary or critical approach to it. There's going to be multiple perspectives that I'm bringing into the subject. So I'm really thinking about, maybe I was going to have maybe 12 to 16 chapters total. So that's about three chapters section one, three chapters in section two, and then six, and then four. So about 12 to 16 chapters. I was gonna bring it down to about 12 to 16 chapters. So I might have to remove some chapters in the future. So this is most of the work that has been done so far in writing this book. Um, I have additional announcements to make, so I'll probably make them next week or at the end of this week. I'm thinking next week, and so that's the first most important step that I've done so far in the book. My next step is to start gathering sources for my book and sharing them on Patreon. So guys, please support my Patreon. Okay, bye.